Hi guys, so just before this video starts, I want to give a shout out to Esoteric and A Villainous Toaster, as I primarily used their gameplay footage for this video. And I would just like to say, if you're going to be watching this video, you're probably going to want to put the playback speed to 1.25, as looking back at my voiceovers and recording, they came across quite slow, and when I tried to change them, they broke down and just didn't work. So you might want to do that before the video begins. So the reason why I'm here today is because I believe that Savathun isn't actually Osiris, but I believe that Osiris is actually Nokris, and this video is going to go into details as to why I think that. So, I hope you enjoy. Isn't Nokris dead? In the False Idols Grimoire card, we learn that he taught the art of necromancy to Savathun in exchange for insight into the Dreaming Mind's talents. More on that later. Quote, "As Zol did for my heart, I offer a trade. Knowledge for knowledge. Grant me sight into the Dreaming Mind's talent, and I will teach you what you ask." Even though we killed him at the end of Season of the Arrivals, we now know that Savathun can bring him back to life. But would she? I would say yes, because both Nokris and Savathun are ideologically aligned, and I think it reasonable that she would want as many allies as possible. She most likely views him as a disposable pawn, but now that she has the power of necromancy, she can bring him back to life every time he dies. In addition, considering that he's very physically weak, he's probably cheap to resurrect, thus making him an efficient pawn, if we are to assume that there is a cost to using necromancy, a soul for a soul or something like that. In the False Idols lore card, we are told, Savathun looked upon her charlatan court from a distant transcendent hollow. Her nascent alliance had produced power twinfold. Now, the definition of nascent is especially of a process of organisation just coming into existence and beginning to display signs of future potential. This to me suggests more than just a one-season fling, for lack of a better word, as the word alliance carries a lot of weight, especially when we're talking about the Witch Queen in my opinion. And finally, if we take into consideration the universal disappointment of Warmind, I wouldn't put it past Bungie to try and give the character of Nokris more development in future stories. Why not Savathun?
There's no certainty where the Witch Queen is concerned, but I have strong suspicions. Above all, she seeks knowledge to inform her plans, and seeks pawns to carry them out. She is not as foolhardy as her brother. She would never risk a direct confrontation.
Hiding in a tower whilst posing as a guardian could be interpreted as a direct confrontation and thus contradictory to her nature. And if we are to assume that there is a punishment for her, a hive god being discovered and killed outside of her throne, such as consuming a lot of tribute or soul energy, we would consider this a hefty gamble. However, we know that she likes to use puppets to carry out her plans, such as Nokris during Season of the Arrivals, Dul and Kanu in the Dreaming City, and Quoria, etc. So, I think it's reasonable to hypothesize that she might use Nokris supplicant to Savathun as an agent to oversee and spy on the Guardians, and relay that information to her, who is hiding somewhere. Also, in the leaks we were told that Osiris had been replaced by Savathun, not that she is Osiris. And within the Ripe 7 lore card, the narrator is highly suspected to be Savathun, who at one point collapses and vomits black goo, implying that she is weak and her worm is starving. Therefore, in my opinion, it doesn't make that much sense that she would be hanging around the tower with the possibility of her, supposedly Osiris, having another episode and attracting the attention and suspicion of other guardians. The actions of Osiris are reminiscent of Nokris. In Season of the Arrivals, we play missions called Interference, where we have to stop Nokris from interrupting our communications with the darkness. And what does Osiris consistently do throughout Season of the Chosen and Season of the Splicer? Interfering with the actions, specifically communications, between multiple characters, such as Osiris advising Crow not to tell Zavala about the assassination attempt on his life, and going so far as to scold him for going against his wishes.
Wait, you aren't going to tell the commander? This concerns him. He deserves to know.
My hope is there won't be anything to tell.
An assassin was inside our walls. I had to do something.
This isn't the first time an enemy has infiltrated the city, and it won't be the last. Your concern is noted, but far from a crisis.
An attempted assassination isn't a crisis?
Osiris, in the empty vessel lore card, stops Saladin from talking to Commander Zavala. Osiris sidesteps, getting between Saladin and the stairs. Now it may not be the best time if you're hoping to find an ally in the Commander, Osiris explains as he places a guiding hand on Saladin's elbow, drawing him away from the main walkway. Osiris, in the expunge mission Styx, advises against Mithrax from talking with Lakshmi.
But perhaps House Light can still offer some assistance. My engineers could improve on the design, make it easier for Lakshmi.
No. The Black Armory has already provided necessary enhancements for us. Lakshmi will manage, I'm confident. Besides, the less interaction Lakshmi has with your people at the moment, the better.
During the week where it's revealed that Quoria is behind this season's event, Osiris interrupts a conversation between us and Mithrax.
Quoria serves the Witch Queen Savathun. It is she who is responsible for the endless night.
Are you certain of your data? After all, Savathun is known for her deceptions.
Osiris, I did not know you had access to this channel.
I wish to confer with you and the Guardian privately.
We also learn that during week 6 of season 14 that Osiris wishes to capture Quoria to learn its secrets.
If my experience and wisdom can aid you in Quoria's capture, you may have it.
Capture? Quoria is discordant and must be exorcised if the great machine's sky is to shine again.
The things we could learn were we to capture it. Think, Mithrax.
Coincidentally, during Season of the Arrivals, we learn that Nokris wishes to obtain insight into the Dreaming Mind's talents in exchange for teaching Savathun necromancy. I don't think it was ever confirmed that Savathun came through on her promise or that Nokris ever used those dreaming talents, but I don't think we can ignore that both these characters have a vested interest in uncovering Quoria's talents, even when other characters have advised against such an act. In addition, we learn from the Wormhusk Crown, quote, "There is much to be known, and he would know all. The ageless volumes of Apocrypha, all consumed voraciously, feeding the mind of the lesser. Driven by a different kind of sword logic, he let the stories of the world fill the void just as the worm feeds." Osiris has consistently provided us knowledge and insight into Hive culture and technology throughout this year's multiple seasons to Eris Morn-like degrees.
You know what thrall are?
I'm no child. I know what thrall are.
To the Hive, a thrall is a child. Quick to physically mature. But still little more than a toddler taking its first steps. These thrall scream, seek, kill, devour. To grow, advance, and change. To think the Vex are able to divide themselves between the material world and this place to engineer their plans. This is not unlike the Ascendant Plane, which raises many questions. The tower you saw on the way in, that's a Hive cryptolith. It's a conduit of darkness, one of many. The High Celebrate is using them to deploy soldiers across dimensions. Tempt others to Sivu Arath's side. To think you can enter this plane using nothing but dead essences. Sivu Arath strikes where Savathun first pushed through the veil and entered the Dreaming City. Has she no ambition of her own?
Because he is an authority on the Vex, not the Hive, which wouldn't cause much suspicion on its own if it was not for Osiris's complete inability to assist us with the dispersion of the Endless Night.
It seems they have found a way to harness our energy against us, and even in all his wisdom, Osiris can offer no solution.
Very confusing, as Osiris has spent decades within the Infinite Forest, a series of simulations, yet he is completely unable to help us. Osiris is too obvious to be Savathun. If Osiris is secretly the Witch Queen of Trickery, he's not doing a particularly good job at being subtle, as it's universally agreed upon that he's acting suspiciously. There is no shortage of sus dialogue/actions from Osiris, but here are some examples that come to mind. In Season 12, he gets knocked over by a knight, and if stabbed, could possibly uncover his disguise and blow the entire operation.
You're here! Finally!
Is it done? Calm down, Tia!
Osiris!
In Season 13, upon Crow confronting him about Sagira's death, he pauses and immediately tries to shut down the conversation in an overly aggressive tone, which to me seemed kind of uncharacteristic of him.
Unmasked? Did the spider teach you that even small mistakes bring large consequences? I suppose you learned that chasing Xivu Arath.
Choose your next words wisely.
In Season 14, upon interrupting our conversation with Mithrax, he interjects with a very abrasive, petulant line of dialogue.
How did you miss this?
In the same way it went unseen by the mighty Osiris.
If we take into consideration that he is secretly Nokris, who has a desire for the Dreaming Mind's talents, it would make sense that he temporarily breaks character upon the revelation that his sought-after power had been kept from him, perhaps even by Savathun herself if she was disingenuous with her deal in Season of the Arrivals. In Season 14, there are numerous pieces of dialogue from the Override missions that raise even more suspicion from Osiris.
I don't know if I ever told you, Ikora, but I'm proud of the leader you've become. It's just a shame you failed to heed more conventional wisdom.
Such as?
Cauterize all contact with the darkness, lest you risk infestation.
As we remember, this was the exact goal of Nokris during Season of the Arrivals.
Another network collapsed. I'll begin analysis of the data we recovered.
We're spotting shadows.
What is this phrase?
Primitive human astronomy. They would observe a distant star through a telescope.
He condescends to humanity and refers to them as they, not we.
Excellent work. The Guardian's performance has provided me with a wealth of information.
Still plotting, are we?
Pardon?
You were always trying to look 10 steps ahead. I suppose that's why you and the speaker used to butt heads.
Ah, yes. Well, forewarned is forearmed. But I don't need to tell you that, do I?
He said this in a very sheepishly manner, as if he feared he would be found out. I think that the Witch Queen would have handled that much better.
Elixni. Cabal. Hive 2, perhaps. Imagine what we could all do if we simply understood.
You would join hands with Savathun?
This was also Nokris' goal in Season of the Arrivals, as he asked us to pledge our allegiance to her.
You are a child reaching toward a flame. The Taken Queen would not have you burnt. Pledge your allegiance and be reborn.
Other potential evidence. This last section is dedicated to some pieces of lore and information to supplement this theory. Aboard the Glycan, Osiris has some remarkably interesting dialogue to say.
No. You burned away. I saw it.
What do you hear, Empress?
Mistakes. Thrown on the pyre of my past. You heard something different?
The ignorance of my youth. The pain of change. Unproven faith wilted by logic.
I personally think that this dialogue is just as applicable to Nokris as it is Savathun. Let's take a look at the False Idol's Grimoire card again. The High Priest knelt before his withered god, mired in the ambivalence of shattered ideology. His faith replaced by the reality of Zol's failure. No wisdom or debased ritual buried in decrepit tomes could restore what was lost, nor was he inclined to attempt such an act. Dissolution swept over, the will of the thousands silenced by light and code. He would have called this an act of heresy once, when the truth had not yet been revealed. There are no gods, there are only chains, and those at either end. In addition, we know from the Moths to a Flame Grimoire card that Osiris, even in his early days, was critical and skeptical of the Traveller's gifts. The Traveller was wounded when it created us. That pain echoes. Some of us make choices we shouldn't. Some of us are scared. The process isn't streamlined. Flaws. Osiris shrinks against the forest's aphotic density. If there are flaws in the light, then it could be corrupted. It is not indomitable, and so in time would be challenged. So the quote, "The pain of change, unproven faith wilted by logic," isn't really applicable to him in my opinion, as he never had any unjust faith in the Traveler. During week 12 of Season of the Arrivals, Eris Morn has some very interesting dialogue for us.
This is a biological term like camouflage, but this wording pertains to stalking predators. Specifically, a carnivore disguising itself to get close to its prey. The darkness could mean this as a warning. Or it could simply mean to sow dissension among us.
During Season of the Dawn, some lore concerning Osiris dabbling with his sundial raised suspicion amongst the Destiny community, and in the context of this conspiracy theory, in my mind, has regained some form of relevancy. Drifter walked to the central spire and put his ear up against it. "This core," he said, leaning close. His eyes darted back to Osiris. "It's whispering." Osiris' expression didn't change. His arms didn't uncross. "We'll steal the core away. I understand the ramifications. Good luck keeping that thing contained. Not something I would bargain with Hotshot." The implications here are that Osiris used remnants of Ahamkara magic, like bones for example, as they have a reputation for whispering, such as the sealed Ahamkara grasps, which mentions that covering the bones in silver helps quiet the auditory hallucinations. This is also supported during the Shadowkeep cutscene when Eris Morn goes to communicate with the statue reaches out and covers her Ahamkara bone with silver. But they also have a reputation for applying unforeseen costs with their wishes. Specifically, guardians who are implied to have made wishes with Ahamkara either end up dead, people they care about end up dead, or both, such as but not limited to Kahanan loses his fire team to the Vex shortly after wishing for an endless fight with Ahamkara on Mars. Tulala Fairwind, the first Hunter Vanguard, ends up dead after playing a game with an Ahamkara. Lord Saladin's Iron Lords die at the hands of Siva sometime after he wishes to fight a dragon. And Lu Fang dies at the hand of Crota shortly after she desired to have an endless fistfight with an Ahamkara. Considering that these wishes result in the death of the requester, or the loved ones he or she cares about, I believe that the cost of Osiris using the sundial to save his husband, Saint 14, from the hands of the Vex won't result in the death of our guardian, but rather Osiris's own life being taken at the hands of the Hive, if that hasn't happened already. So that's the theory pretty much reached the end. I've said all I wanted to concerning this theory, and I just wanted to put this last little outro bit to give my thoughts and opinions on whether or not I think this conspiracy theory is true, and what would I like to see from it if it turns out that it is true. So, if this conspiracy theory is true, and Osiris secretly is Nokris, in a similar manner as to how Cade 6, a cape-wielding hunter rogue, was killed by a cape-wielding hunter rogue, who was then killed and reincarnated as a guardian, I would like to see Osiris, a provocative exile with father issues, be killed by a provocative exile with father issues, who then gets killed and reincarnated as a guardian. And I think the ghost to do it should be Sagira, as I believe that if Destiny did such a thing, it could open up an entire pantheon of potentially interesting stories. Stories that I'm not going to go into detail in this video because the video's already gone on long enough. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a comment, tell me what you thought about it, because I will read and respond to it. And if you do that, if you could press the like and or subscribe button, I'd appreciate it. So again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.